What up, my good friends? I am here to talk to y'all about the 5 best and the 5 worst books I found on BookTube. So this is going to be based both on like the fundamentals of storytelling structure as well as the technical writing, like writing on a sentence level, or what most people just call like prose, and how much I enjoyed the books. And the two often go hand in hand. I've been watching BookTube since like the middle of 2020. I actually found it through like ASMR role plays, people who pretend that they like own a bookstore to make you tingle. Yeah. The algorithm is a very interesting thing. I discovered a lot of booktubers and I discovered a lot of books before I actually started making my own videos, which was over 2 years ago now. I know you can't tell by the sub count, but you know, people like what they like, and not that many people like me. So if you're watching this, I'm very grateful. So these are not the best and worst books I've ever read, but these are the best and worst books that I've read specifically because of BookTube, or AuthorTube in one case. Sorry, I just ate Chinese food. Thanks. Roll the intro. So the 5th best book I've ever read on BookTube is called The Nature of Fragile Things by Susan Meisner. I found that on Angie Thomas's channel. She's one of the few booktubers who really focuses on historical fiction. So The Nature of Fragile Things is a women's historical fiction book about the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. So it's a really moving story about a mail-order bride from Northern Ireland who chose her husband based on a want ad in a newspaper because she needed to get out of her hometown, and her husband had a child and she wanted a child to love. This really has a lot to say about female friendship and what it takes for a woman to rise from the ashes. 5th worst, The Nightingale. I hate this book. I hate it so much, and there's nothing really wrong with it on a storytelling or a technical sense. I just absolutely hate it. Angie Thomas is probably the biggest fan. I found The Nightingale on a lot of different people's channels. It's a really popular book, and I hate it. I'm just really, really over World War II stories set in Europe, and this is about 2 sisters in World War II France. One's fighting, one's hiding. It didn't tell me anything I didn't already know about World War II and humanity, especially female agency. So I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Okay, 4th best book I found on BookTube is Fever 1793 by Laurie Halls Anderson. And I found that on ARG Schooling, which is like a BookTube / homeschool channel. A lot of these booktubers who like Histopic are also homeschooling moms. And yeah, I was looking for books for my struggling readers. I found this one, and it's about the yellow fever epidemic in Philadelphia in 1793. And it's really interesting because it's one of the few stories I've read that takes place like the generation after the Revolutionary War. All the people who are alive during this, the adults remember, but the children don't because they were born after the war. Trying to flee the illness, but they find out the illness is everywhere. It's about a 14-year-old girl named Maddie, and it's really good because it's about a teenager but written on a very low reading level, and my students love it, so thank you. 4th worst, Stones of Light by Zach Argyle. So I found that on various fantasy channels, but I'd say Andrew is probably most responsible for my reading Threadlight, because he called the series better than any self-pub book has the right to be, so I was really curious. Let's get it out of the way. Yes, I have serious beef with Argyle because I'm not going to tell the story again. But regardless of all that, the second Threadlight book had some serious flaws in the technical writing, and the characters really hadn't changed from the first book. I could at least see like where the story was going over the trilogy, but the creativity just wasn't there. The characters, like anything having to do with the characters' eye color, making a difference in their life and their place in society, is just really uncreative, and it's so overdone that It's kind of sad. Third best, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I found that on Jesse's channel. Now, I know this one is a bit divisive, but I think that might be because some people, when they read it, aren't really like in the right headspace. It's very satirical and sardonic when it's talking about the South. And it's really kind of written in the voice that pretentious people have when talking about like Southern housewives. Personally, I think if you don't have small children, there's really no excuse for not working. So I actually really enjoyed the voice of the author. And I think the author did a really good job of the Southern, like with the women in the Southern book club, of giving them agency and making fun of them while still giving them justice. And it also sparked my taste for adult horror, which I didn't originally have. I didn't like horror books. I thought they were stupid. I didn't think they had anything to offer, but this one did. So now I actually really like adult horror. I've always loved middle grade horror, like middle grade ghost stories, like Mary Downing Hahn type stuff. But I was just never into adult horror until I discovered The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Now I love it. Third worst, Rebel's Creed. Where do you think I found this? So I've always had a hard time on my channel talking about this book because it was so all over the place. I think it was like 2 novellas and like the start of a novel. Like the prose was messy and the font in the book was huge. Like what the hell was it? Like size 18? And because it was so all over the place, it was hard to follow and I just didn't vibe with it. So moving on. Second best book, Burial Rites. I found this on Drinking by My Shelf's channel. She also does book break. She's an amazing person. I love her. I loved Burial Rites. I enjoyed it so much because it was about the last person to be executed in Iceland. It takes place in like 1818, and in the state of Texas, it's 2023, and we're still killing people. If you can't tell, I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't believe any human has the right to end another human's life, and that includes representatives of the state of Texas and the 26 other states that still have the death penalty. Burial Rites tells the story of the months leading up to the execution, which was by beheading with an axe, and is told from the point of view of the condemned as well as all those who knew her and, knew her, lived with her, and gave her counsel around the time of her execution. Second worst, A Touch of Light. Found on so many BookTube channels, but I'm going to credit this one to Alan. Now, I've interacted with Tiago Abdallah on Alan's Discord, and he's an amazing guy. I've also seen him on Realmathon. I just wish his writing was as charming and stand-up as his personality. There were so many fundamental storytelling problems in this book. It opened too soon. The prologue didn't really have anything in it that couldn't have been told via proper exposition. I don't know if Abdallah is a native English speaker, but he doesn't have an English name. So maybe, I don't know. There was a lot of word confusion. And I just remember several times he describes characters as like itching themselves, like he itched his nose. No, you don't itch your nose, you scratch your nose. That's just the kind of nuance that wouldn't make it through good beta readers and good proofreaders. Abdallah had a good concept, and also I really like anything to do with death. I really liked how death was such a big preoccupation, but he needs to take some creative writing classes. He has good ideas with terrible fundamentals. Absolute best is this. Alright, it's Ice Planet Barbarians, which I found on Daniel Green's channel when he did a review of it. I had very low expectations of this book, and I actually read it to like torture myself, and I was shocked. Yes, it was weird. Yes, it was stupid, but holy shit, it was competently written both structurally and on a sentence level. The characters felt like they could have been real people, and there were very high stakes. They're stuck on an ice planet after they got abducted by aliens. Yes, it had problems with consent and Stockholm Syndrome, but so does Outlander, and I still love that series. So this is obviously not the greatest book, on this list, but the fact that it was space alien erotica, written well, technically and structurally, and was also so damn enjoyable, that's why it's first on this list. Alright, the absolute worst book I have read because of book/AuthorTube is The Cyborg Tinkerer by Meglator. My very first reading vlog, and still most viewed video to this day, was a vlog of reading this book. It is the worst book I've ever read. Absolutely nothing made sense, and the author describes it as a polyamorous space opera fantasy romance fairy tale retelling. He also, on the first page, describes a boat as having deflated tits for sails, and later describes the main character, who is a Mary Sue, as having a heart heavier than a large woman's tits. This is not only the worst book I've ever read, it's also the weirdest. So that's it. I hope you got some good recs out of this, and I just want to extend a quick thank you to BookTube for all the awesome books I found while watching. So as always, keep reading, keep writing, keep loving words, and I'll see you next time. Bye!